Good morning. Oh, is it on? Okay. Good morning. I'm Kira Turnbow, the Executive Director of the Idaho Republican Party. A legislative enactment of this kind that is done without our organization's consent interferes with our constitutional right of free association. We believe that our current bylaw calling for a Republican presidential nominating contest in early March benefits our party, our voters, and the state of Idaho. Early participation in a national nominating contest allows our voters to have a say in shaping the issues relevant to a national campaign and draws significant national figures to our state, increasing the relevance of Idaho-specific issues in a national discourse. Our organization, which is not an agency or department of state government, voted and enacted a bylaw calling for our presidential nominating primary to be in March. If the legislature or the Secretary of State wants to move the state because of a perceived cost saving, then they should have contacted our independent organization's elected leaders and allowed our members to initiate a change to our bylaws. And we challenge the notion that moving the primary to a late date will provide a cost savings. What is certain is that moving the primary back will prevent Idaho from obtaining any of the advantages that other early nominating states currently receive. For example, South Carolina, a primary state that holds its contest just a few weeks before Idaho's current date in March, estimates that it has obtained several $1 billion in enhanced revenue for its hospitality and tourism sector. In other words, early voting states have an increased attention on their domestic economies, their domestic industries, and they get revenue and investment from national campaigns and national figures. Idaho is the last remaining conservative state in the American West. We have a unique role to play in the Republican Party and in shaping the issues relevant to a national presidential nominating contest. To sideline our state's unique interests and to put our voters to the back of the nominating process is a grave mistake and one that we think deserves to be debated and deliberated upon in full by our elected party leaders and members in our meeting, not here in the state legislature. Thank you.
Questions for Ms. Turnbow? Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Turnbow. Thank you for being here. So my first question is, did you present this information on the House side?
Ms. Turnbow.
No, we did not.
Mr. Chairman, follow up. Can you share why there's been this concerted effort on the Senate side, but there was really little to no information presented in opposition on the House side?
Ms. Turnbow.
I'm here on behalf of Chairwoman Dorothy Moon. So I believe that it's my understanding that it went through fairly fast on the House side, and that
That's fine.
Yeah.
Can I ask another question?
Yes. Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. And I wasn't trying to put you on the spot. I'm really trying to understand kind of this felt like it came out of suddenly. My question, though, as the party representative here today, was there any, have you had any time to look at voter participation between, in particular, 2016, we had the presidential primary and then the legislative or the May elections. In my district, those were significant drops. Is the party interested at all in that reduction in what perceived reduction in voter turnout between the presidential primaries and those May elections?
Ms. Turnbow.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Excuse me. I'd like to repeat to the committee that what I'm testifying on is that we believe that this is a violation of our freedom of association. So as far as voter turnout, I personally haven't looked into that. But, yeah, that's what I'm here to testify about.
Senator Winder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Turnbull, thank you for being here.
Yes.
And sorry to put you on the spot.
That's okay.
I'm sure you'd rather have the chairwoman here to answer our questions. But you talk about free association. That's a really interesting perspective as it looks at a primary. Because being a member of the party, and I've watched it over the last 10 years, move more towards trying to dissolve free association, trying to restrict free association, and getting to the point where at some point, if certain members of the party prevail, central committees would actually say who's a Republican and who can be endorsed by the party and who can put their name on the ballot. To me, that's the greatest violation of free association possible. So I don't see how this ties into the primary when the party's working in just the opposite direction.
Ms. Turnbull.
Thank you, Senator Winder. What I have a note here is that as a private party, this would be the equivalent of having bank or churches or other religious organizations bylaws in the state statute. So the note that I have is that as a private party and that has voted to have our primary in March, it should be the decision of our of the party to decide when we want to hold our primary.
Mr. Chairman, and I agree with you. The party ought to be able to have their primary when they want, but the issue here is who pays for it. And the state has agreed in the past to pay for it. So that's the issue, and it is about money. So again, free association. You can do whatever you want as a party. You can make whatever rules you want. You can have your own primary whenever you want. But should the state be obligated to pay for that?
Ms. Turnbull.
Thank you, Senator Winder. One thing that we have noted is that any asserted cost savings is merely an estimate, and that estimate should be balanced with the very obvious loss of actual or potential revenue to the state of Idaho and their industries. And I heard earlier that Secretary of State McCrane said that they didn't calculate that, as Senator Byrne had asked about the industries and the potential revenue to our economy here.
Mr. Chairman, may I restate my question?
Follow up.
If you want to be able to have your primary whenever you want as a party, we've heard more and more, particularly on our Senate floor this year, about this is a private organization. This is private. Your state should stay out of it. Do you really think in that case the general public, including the Democrats, the members of the should pay for the party for a primary? It's an interesting question when you think about it.
Ms. Turnbull.
Thank you, Senator Winder. I can't speak to that as Chairwoman Moon is not here, and that's not something that I probably have the authority to speak on.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Taves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Turnbow. So first, I have two questions. First of all, when was that the bylaw adopted? Do you know the date or idea of what the date was when the original bylaw was adopted that moved it to March or even a year?
Ms. Turnbow.
Thank you, Senator Taves. I don't in front of me have the particular date, but I know that in 2015 is when the shift and the party worked significantly to shift the primary up to March. So 2015 and then 2016 is the first year that it went into play.
Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Ms. Turnbow. I'm also noting that the GOP Central Committee winter meeting was held January 6th through 7th. Was there any conversation about this change prior to that meeting? Because that seems like it would be the appropriate time if we're coordinating with the party to make these changes. Was there any discussion before that meeting so that that could be a subject of the winter meeting?
Ms. Turnbull.
Thank you, Senator Taves. No, it was not discussed at the December or January meeting. I don't believe it was on our radar at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Byrne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Turnbow, I have a question. So if you could walk me through why the party feels like they need consent when the state is paying for the election.
Ms. Turnbow.
Oh, sorry, I lost my paper. Thank you, Senator Byrne. As a private private political party that sets the date of when we feel that it's important for Idaho to be on the national stage as the most conservative state in the West. So moving it to May will create insignificance, and we believe it could decrease voter turnout because the presidential nominee is already pretty much decided by May 17th. In fact, a lot of the former presidential candidates drop off by May 15th. We did look into, in the last significant primary, which would have been 2016, many of the main contenders had already dropped off by March 15th. So by May 17th, we feel that voters might not think that their vote matters to go in and vote.
Follow up?
And Ms. Turnbow, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's why you feel that consent is required by the state party to change the date, even though we pay for the election.
Ms. Turnbow?
Thank you, Senator Burnt. Sorry, I may have gone off topic on that one. For consent, hold on, let me look at my notes here. I think that just as a private party, not having our consent interferes with our right to freely associate and hold the primary the date of our choosing.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Turnbow, you're getting a lot of tough questions right now. I actually sort of feel sorry for you a little bit that you're here and the chairwoman isn't here, and you've done a great job. And I hope you don't feel like you're getting attacked anyway. It's just this is an interesting discussion and important question. So I really do appreciate you.
Thank you, Senator Burke.
Thank you. Senator Winthrop?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ms. Turnbow. First, for the record, I want to say it was very exciting when Obama came here twice, but that's beside the point. My question is this, is that we've had quite a few bills in the committee about elections and consolidating them because it would increase voter turnout and decrease then the amount of money that we spend. So, and that's how I was looking at this bill too. But it sounds like that's not really in mind for you, the consolidation, saving money, as well as increasing turnout. Is that what I'm hearing?
Ms. Turnbow?
Thank you, Senator Winthrop. Primarily what I have in my notes is the freedom of association. Also, I think that the financial aspect hasn't quite been reviewed as far as it goes with the economy and the infusing excitement in the state of Idaho early in the primary for voters, for voter turnout, for the economy, for different elements. So kind of multifaceted.
Senator Winder?
Not a question, but to maybe answer Senator Tay's question a little bit. I was really involved in the caucus process when we did that. It didn't work very well. It really didn't achieve what we hoped it would. So we then started talking about primary dates again and coming back to a primary. And the party wanted to have a March primary for all the reasons that Ms. Turnbull has mentioned, hoping that we'd get more play in Idaho, that we would actually get an economic boost, that we would get the candidates here and that we could actually look them in the eye face to face. That hasn't played out so well for the Republican side. So I think that what this is about is who pays for primary elections, how are those primaries actually managed by the parties, and whether or not there actually is free association for people that have a track record of being Republican, are no longer considered Republican, and would not get an endorsement from the party. How tight does the control of the party get? And then if it gets so tight, like in other states, they say, yeah, you are an independent party. You can do whatever you want to do. You can establish your dates, but you have to pay for your primary. We'll pay for the general, but not the primary.
And you're welcome to comment on that if you'd like. If not, I'll go to the next question.
Go ahead.
Senator Ruckte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Turnbow. Thank you, Ms. Turnbow. This is going to dovetail a little bit with what Senator Winder just said. So Idaho Code Section 34-731 makes it clear that our political parties in Idaho are not required to participate in the primary that the state government pays for. And if you're somewhat skeptical about the financial savings, couldn't the Republican Party just set up its own primary, or whatever you want to call it, and run those elections separate on the dates that you want so that you get the maximum bang for the buck, and then just leave the state out of it?
Ms. Turnbow?
Thank you, Senator Ruckty. I don't believe I have the authority to speak on that, but I would say that hypothetically that is probably an option, but that would be something that our party would have to, as a whole, decide and discuss in a state central committee meeting.
I don't see any other questions. You've been very gracious in answering a lot of questions, and appreciate you coming this morning and be willing to testify and answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee.